Hello and welcome to Live Genre Chronicles. I'm Val, your host. I was born a worm and I'll die a worm.
I'm Becky. I completely forgot to do a funny intro.
I'm Leroy, and I crave the dark.
Extremely on brand.
Yep.
You need to prepare for your boss fights, Becky, because we're talking about Vagrant Story, a game that is all about spending half your fucking game time in the menus preparing for things.
It really is, and I was really bad at that on my playthrough. So I suppose it's apt that I failed. Thank you for desperately trying to salvage my my introduction, even if it came to nothing.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
Yeah, so Vagrant Story is a PlayStation 1 game directed, written, and produced by Yasumi Matsuno. The man is responsible for this mess. And it's it's really fascinating. It's very unique. And I don't know that that's always a positive thing for it. Because
Yeah.
if it had more time to if it was iterated upon a little more, this would probably be like a style of thing that would be really well loved. But
Well,
yeah.
it is because they call that Dark Souls.
No, I don't think that's actually straight up a lineage thing.
There are linkages there, but
There are, but
I kind of agree. There's just like too much in the soup, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the Matsuno things that we are going to talk about as we talk about Yasumi Matsuno. But yeah, so it's been a while since I played this because I played this at the start of the year on stream. You can check out my VODs from that on my YouTube. And so I've forgotten all the plot and what all the characters are called. But I remember
As
a
you're
lot of the
supposed
game.
to.
I remember a lot of the game and like its overall vibe and the feel of playing it. And like my interest in this game is it'll be an Ashley Riot doll. I'm sorry.
That is the joke. Sorry.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It's really, really hot here, okay? I'm frazzled. So history lesson first. And this is all ground we covered before, but it's very, very relevant to why we're doing this game and things that are interesting about this game. We are yeah. The core of our project now going back like 8 years. By the way, congratulations, 8-year anniversary to us, what, last week?
Yeah, something like that. I feel like it was a Labor Day
I didn't
weekend.
even know.
Yeah.
It was late August of 2015. Thank you, sorry. And the like genesis of this project all the way back then was our frustration with a discourse in the technical sense of a way of talking that existed around Japanese RPGs going back to about 10 years before that, to the mid noughties.
Mm-hmm.
And we've looked at how that discourse developed from a bunch of different directions. Basically, this idea that the Japanese games industry was really good at making RPGs, and then it lost the knack of making RPGs, or it failed to innovate on its formulas in some way, and fell behind the times, something like that. And it would not be correct to say that like Yasumi Matsuno was involved in that, in the sense of like was part of why it happened, but because of where he was at the time, which was director of and the original concept and writer of Final Fantasy 12, which came out in 2006, he was sort of exposed in the crux, right? A lot of attention fell on what happened with him at that point, at the end of his career at Square Enix. And full disclosure, Final Fantasy 12 is maybe my favorite big commercial video game. I have a real deep emotional stake in this. Not entirely in Matsuno's favor, but tracing out why part of the reason for covering this game and for looking at Matsuno's legacy, and this is the third Matsuno game that we'll have covered after Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 12 on the old cast. Part of the reason for looking at Matsuno's legacy is to understand why his name got thrown around the way it did at that time and what that contributed to this overall idea of Japanese RPGs being dead or something like that. So Matsuno, when Matsuno was picked as the original director of Final Fantasy 12, that was a sort of in a way it was a coronation, because he'd been working his way up for over a decade since he first entered the games industry. His rise, looking at his the Wikipedia article that includes the list of games worked on by Yasumi Matsuno, makes his rise look frankly meteoric. In 1990, he joins Quest to work on Conquest of the Crystal Palace. His next credit is as director on Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen, which there's a 3-year gap there. There's no way that was all he was doing. And then it's Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen as director, a Japanese-only game, which is listed here as Philip and Marlowe in Bloomland. It was never released in English. It never officially had that title as a Japanese title. Then Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Final Fantasy 12. All of which are at least cult hits with the kind of people who in 2005 had strong opinions, not just about like Final Fantasy or Square Enix, but about Japanese RPGs.
Also, very brief interjection. Immediately, like 3 years after Final Fantasy 12, he's credited as the writer for Mad World, which is such a strange fucking thing. Like, what the fuck?
Some weird stuff happened after he left Square.
Yeah, but Mad World of all things, like the chainsaw game. Okay,
Mad World actually rules though.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, he was brought in on it by an old friend from the Quest days, from the Ogre Battle, from his Ogre Battle book. In the aftermath of his very ugly departure from Squaresoft. But you can see in that progression, right? He makes 2 of the most celebrated Ogre Battle games. That gets him into Squaresoft because Tactics Ogre was a big landmark for tactical RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
That gets him, Squaresoft buy him in to do the Final Fantasy Tactics game that becomes FF Tactics. That's successful enough that he gets to direct his own project, Vagrant Story. There's the follow-up to FF Tactics, Tactics Advance, which he's credited as producer rather than director, at least here on this list. And then he gets to make the next Final Fantasy. And he's announced as the director of that, I think, in 2002 or 2003, so at the start of the project. But Final Fantasy 12 then kind of goes silent, and alarm bells start ringing because Square have The Spirits Within, which is a disaster. They have I'm going to get the name wrong, Sakamoto's departure to form Mistwalker. Is it Sakamoto?
I think it's Sakaguchi.
Sakaguchi, sorry. I knew it. I names and my brain. Very sorry.
Yeah.
Sakaguchi departs to form Mistwalker, takes a bunch of other Squaresoft people with him. I didn't really appreciate that until I was reading up on this afternoon, but he took not just a few other big names, because Uematsu does a bunch of work with Mistwalker, for example, but he took a chunk of the staff who had been working on Final Fantasy 12 with him. And the people who are following Final Fantasy, who are kind of brand loyalists in the consumer space, are worried about this, and the game is taking what was then an unprecedentedly long time to come out. If you look at the 90s, there's basically a Final Fantasy a year from about 1994 onwards, and certainly like 7, 8, 9, 10 are one year after another, with other games going on the side. Square goes kind of quiet. There's also somewhere around here, a little bit later, is the first launch of Final Fantasy 14, which also goes poorly. And all of this is building up to the explosion of negative sentiment that happens after Final Fantasy 13. But then in 2005, at one of the big events, have I got it here? Yeah, so Square holds a 2-day Square party. So this is their own kind of con in Japan where they're doing all the big Final Fantasy promotional stuff. And they announced the release date of March 2006 in Japan. And they also announced that Matsuno has stopped working on the game. And has stepped aside in favor of Akitoshi Kawazu, the Saga guy. And Matsuno releases a statement saying he's stepping aside because of illness. He's had illness trouble that has prevented him taking some of his responsibilities on the game or fulfilling some of his responsibilities on the game. And so he's stepping aside for the good of his health, and control is being passed over. And then the shit starts to hit the fan because a rumor gets going that he was either forced out by Square Enix management or was driven out by management meddling. This dovetails with some of the things that are said by Kawazu and others about how the project changed over time. So there's an infamous idea with Final Fantasy XII that originally one of the older male characters was supposed to be the lead character, and then focus grouping or something like that pushed Square to favor a younger protagonist, and they grandfathered the character of Varnin, who is very shallow and uninteresting to lots of people. That's not true. It's based on a misinterpretation of a poorly translated interview that originally was published in French. But all these ideas swirl around Final Fantasy XII, and part of the idea that gets started is that Square Enix, which at this time is still a relatively new merged company, they haven't produced a Final Fantasy game since a mainline main iteration Final Fantasy game since the merger, which happens after Final Fantasy X. There's an idea, I guess, that merger has empowered a corporate culture which is anti-risk taking and hostile to the creative vision of someone like Matsuno. So like Sakaguchi left, and Nomura is still there, but is a figure of ridicule because people hate Kingdom Hearts, or there's a particular kind of person who hates Kingdom Hearts and hates Kingdom Hearts kind of representing anything about what Square Enix is. And Matsuno, who does have a kind of auteur status. I want to say more about auteur status in a moment, but has a kind of auteur status. Is like, oh, this was the last true artist at Square Enix, and they've gotten rid of him because he wouldn't like bow to the focus groups or whatever. Which, if nothing else, is deeply unfair to Akitoshi Kawazu, who frankly has every bit as much right to claim auteur status as Matsuno does, and is maybe even more esoteric and experimental. But the reason that then becomes this totem of Square Enix have lost their way, the idea that the genre is in trouble because its biggest developer is dying, etc. All of that makes Matsuno's career particularly worth looking at to see, well, how did he get that status? What is it about these games that creates that kind of impression? And how overall did that contribute to this discourse? And yeah, like now we have Yoshi P, who is maybe now the celebrated Square Enix designer, the big celebrated Square Enix designer. You know, has made some very successful and well beloved things. But there was after Matsuno left, so there was only really Kawazu and Nomura who had any kind of name recognition at all. That was definitely seen as a what's the word I'm looking for? A barren patch in Square Enix's talent, especially with everything that happened with Nomura around FF13 and Versus 13, which became 15, and their attempt to kind of bring what's his name? I'd gone blank on the name. The guy who did Type 0 and then took over Final Fantasy 15.
I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
It's like Tabata, right? Something.
Tabata, thank you. Hideki Tabata. Yeah, like
It's
there was a
Hajime
bit of
Tabata.
Hajime. Thank you.
Hajime Tabata.
Yeah. And like there was an attempt to like do that with Tabata, and then like FF15 was such a bonfire for careers that even he couldn't really get out of it. And the like Tokyo RPG Factory experiment and everything that became Balan Wonderworld, like that, you know, that's a whole other crisis at Square Enix, really. But I think, you know, we talk about Yoshi P having saved Squaresoft, right? That's a thing that people say. And in some way, what they, in a certain segment of that is, oh, they finally have somebody who can do the Sakaguchi thing in the way that Matsuno was supposed to, but was driven out before he could. And it is worth noting that there is clearly bad blood between Matsuno and Square Enix, because when Square Enix announced that Matsuno was going to return to do some supervising on the 2022 remaster redo of Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, someone popped up to ask about one of his other games on Twitter, and he tweeted back, you know, in wording that left it clear that he was not entirely comfortable with the circumstances. You know, fuck that for a lark. You know, he clearly doesn't want to get sucked back into Square Enix. So that is the context for looking at Matsuno. As I say, we have looked at other Matsuno games. We've covered Final Fantasy 12. We've covered Final Fantasy Tactics. I am in the middle of playing through Tactics Ogre, and we might well do Tactics Ogre at some point as well. But right now we're talking about Vagrant Story. And if there is any weight to auteur theory, then this is this I think is the most kind of, it's the game where we most have to lean on auteur theory to talk about it as a Matsuno game. Because it does bear his stamp very definitely, but obviously it is not, you can't do a genre analysis of this game relative to his other games, because he never made another game like this. In terms of it being almost an action RPG, being primarily a dungeon crawler, being, it's not small in scope, but the actual action is very condensed in scope. The narrative structure is more like a thriller movie in terms of the event. The events all play out in one fairly small, tight context, rather than sprawling in the way that his other stories do.
Yeah, my point of comparison is it feels like a one-off tabletop module that you could probably keep self-contained and not like if you ran a party of D&D characters through this, no one would bat an eye, and also all the plot points would probably just be like, okay, there are some threads that could lead to other places, but like this is pretty self-contained.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it as well. In fact, when I was trying to find a map of Leomond, the city that it's set in, um, I couldn't find a whole coherent map that I was sure actually corresponded to the game. The closest thing I found was a map someone had made for their TRPG campaign where they had taken Leomond as the setting.
Of fucking course.
So yeah, and it's very tractable in that way. But it does also undeniably have Matsuno's fingerprints all over it. Like the systems are incredibly esoteric.
Aren't they
Um,
just?
like, and you know, Matsuno is famous for Final Fantasy 12, which has the Gambit system, which the thing about the Gambit system, and some people really struggle to understand it, and some people take to it like a duck to water. The thing about the Gambit system is that there's no leeway to treat it as like a world simulating mechanic. There's nothing naturalistic about it. It's literally computer programming. You literally write little computer programs in the computer program of the video game. Even though they try to naturalize it, like characters talk about buying gambits and you buy gambits in the shops and stuff.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Like these little side things, but there is one part of a little side quest that is explicitly an NPC uses a gambit in a non-combat situation in that. And the way Balthier talks about everything in the tutorials is extremely funny, but yes, you're not wrong. Where other, a typical thing that happens with RPGs, and especially Western RPGs, is that if they get esoteric, it's because they're trying to represent some real world thing. And in Japanese RPGs, you could talk about like atelier crafting mechanics, which are always like some weird mini game, but it's always presented as this is a way of representing you doing alchemy. And I think even like Kawazu, I'm going to keep coming back to the Kawazu comparison because it is so perfect that Kawazu replaced Matsuno on FF12. They're so similar in so many ways for them to have been contrasted in the way they were. Kawazu's experiments are always like isolated. They don't really have internal logic to them. It's just, hey, what if we gave you an item that's a chainsaw that's a one-hit kill thing, and then we fucked up the programming so you can use it to kill the final boss of Saga 1?
Classic.
And like the monster meat eating mechanic where you can eat skeleton meat and slime meat and stuff. Back in the early Saga games.
I have to wonder if both of them have like interest in tabletop, because it's very like these are just like number crunchy funny things to do that,
yeah,
like
especially older tabletop, that's like kind of the direction they went in before.
Yeah, fucking drink 2 potions, roll on the potion miscibility table and see if you implode. Like
yeah.
So like Matsuno
God.
particularly made tactics RPGs, like Tactics Ogre and FF Tactics. And both of those incredibly have the vibe, not just of tabletop, but specifically of like niche skirmish war games. Like people who were playing the 90s tabletop war games that were the big ones, and they thought, this isn't crunchy enough. This doesn't require me to like check enough finicky bullshit stuff. And like
they were the grognards. Like they were just like,
well, like since Games Workshop rose to dominate that space in the late 90s, and then started to I don't like using the language of dumbing down ever, but started to streamline their game design to accommodate a wider range of players. They produced an exodus of people going out to make. No, I want the weird, like super precise, demanding shit I'm mainly talking Western context here, Dura. Like I don't really know the Japanese TTRPG scene at all.
I can comment on that once you make your point.
Okay, so like in the West, there was this exodus from Games Workshop to we're going to make weirder shit, which is kind of like what's happening with TRPGs since the total ascendancy of D&D, and like independent TRPGs. But I think that's pushing in a different direction with the wargaming stuff. It was all like, okay, here is a game where you actually have to physically lean your head down to the table and make the sightlines yourself. And if your model is not actually doesn't actually have the sightline, they can't shoot. And Matsuno's games are full of shit like that, basically.
Yeah.
Sorry, your point about Japanese TRPGs.
Yeah. So I have a little bit less experience with tabletop stuff than you, because like I never fucked with Warhammer, but like because of my interest in the Log Horizon tabletop role playing game, I was part of the release document for that back when I got it was like a little detail in the like readme that was just like, so the structure of a lot of Japanese gaming stuff is a lot different. They usually go for like self-contained little episodes with every session, even if it like runs a little long. And so most of their stuff is based around that. Because getting all that shit set up regularly probably wouldn't have worked with the space in general Japanese residences. Like it's a lot of space to get that stuff set up. So like
also Japan has a like disastrously workaholic culture that makes finding the free time pretty difficult.
So yeah, like I don't know that there would be a whole like the people who did play Warhammer in Japan were probably even more tabletop weirdo than the ones who got into it and then went, this needs to be more number perverse in the West.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yeah, like that. So that is one element of like the Matsuno thing is we're going to put some weird janky ass system in here which has its own quite complex logic, but is not naturalistic in any way, as opposed to the Kawazu thing of like we're going to put a bunch of weird janky ass systems in, but they're not necessarily going to cohere. Like Matsuno wants it all to add up to something. And in Vagrant Story, that's kind of, I mean, it's really the kind of intricate system of elemental and weapon type and enemy type weaknesses, all of which is moderated through the gear and the buff spells that you use, and like how you think about using magic and what buffs can stack and what can't, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one side of it with Matsuno, and then the yeah, like extremely. This is very off. This is very different to the Western way of doing things. Like in the West, games really try hard to pretend not to be made of math. And or like big commercial games, like the ideology is you have to make it feel like a world, not like a bunch of math. And Matsuno and Kawazu both are unbothered by that concern a lot of the time.
I mean, yeah, when you cast Analyze and Vagrant Story, you can just like see all the numbers that make up this, who you're fighting.
Yeah.
And I wish that they were more visible because you have to analyze and then go into a menu about it, and
there are so fucking many numbers. Because every enemy, just to give a breakdown, like because we've all used guides at various points, we've all looked at stat sheets for bosses. Every enemy has multiple like body parts, like heads, body, arms, legs, tail, etc.
Yeah.
Some of them have like upper and lower body segments. It's that level of detail. And then every segment has its own individually statted set of resistances
Yeah,
across 8 elements, 6 enemy types, and 3 weapon types.
Yeah, the general, like, they don't actually use the enemy type. The enemy type is just like that's what they are, and if your number is bigger, it'll be better at that. The thing is, it's if you've played a Monster Hunter and looked at the weakness like charts for anything, you're used to this. Like, this is just Monster Hunter, but in a different package. Because, like, the first enemy, the first boss you fight is a dragon or a wyvern or whatever. It's just like, okay, do you want to hit its head, its body, its right or left arm, right or left feet, or wings? Those are all normal hits. Yeah. Those are all, like, normal hit zones on a Monster Hunter monster if they got wings. And, like, different elements, including physical, are going to have a different effect on it. And, like, it's not all that much, but it's the process of realigning yourself with it that becomes a little much.
Yeah, well, also, like, to me, as somebody who struggles with reading written instructions, looking at stat sheets for this game just immediately makes me glaze over. I look at these huge blocks of numbers, like, I can't read that. I don't know what to look for. My brain will not process this information.
Meanwhile, I look at the giant array and I'm like, okay, which one of these has the lowest number? That's the one I want to hit. That's it.
Yeah.
And like, here is how I will describe playing Vagrant Story. Imagine that if you were playing Monster Hunter and like 95% of the monsters were basically immune to all of your weapons except for one, and you had to go re-equip every single fucking time you wanted to hit something. And there are several dudes between you and the next monster that you have to fucking re-equip for every single time or run past.
Yeah. It does, like, and like, to be clear, even regular enemies, you can walk into a room and there are 3 human soldiers in that room, and each one of them will be only vulnerable to one weapon type, and it will be a different weapon type for each one.
Yep.
Like,
it's true.
There are save rooms in this game of which that is true. Where, like, when you load from save, you have to switch weapon type 3 times to clear out the room you just loaded into.
Yeah.
I'm late to this realization, but the battle system is actually very similar to GURPS. Have you ever heard of that? It stands
The
for the
TRPG
generic.
system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because GURPS happens in like so-called real time, where actions are measured in seconds, and that's kind of how Vagrant Story works.
Yeah.
And you target different limbs and body parts, and the damage calculation is based on your strength versus their strength. And it's like, I'm just realizing, wow, it's very similar.
Yeah.
Well, all of these things, the convergent evolution is really, like, likely in this space because there are certain fundamental things that you're trying to represent that come from just the context of being human beings who are all embodied in relatively similar ways.
Yeah, like, I joked early on that it was Monster Hunter with bats, and like that continued to be
With the
true.
Fallout system.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
Fallout
Fallout
system.
was inspired by GURPS.
Yeah, like it's straight up just like this. There is a limit to how inventive your targeting system can be.
And all of that then, like, because time stops whenever somebody does a move, and when you go into the menu to start inputting moves, time stops. But so Leroy couldn't play this one on active, unlike other callbacks. But all the movement is kind of hack and slash movement. You're, like, moving around the enemies. They will hit you and then run away. So you're chasing after them to try to get hit in. When they're approaching you, there's a kind of, like, can you time going into the menu right so that they are in range of you so that you don't open the menu until they're in range of you, so you can get a hit off on them, but you open it early enough that they don't get a hit off on you first, which I was rubbish at.
Yeah.
And then to bring the action component back in, it's got my favorite thing, timed button presses.
Yeah.
Which all the guides for this game are like, yeah, just do like 8 correct timed button presses every time on boss fights. I can't do it. I don't think I ever got 8. Sometimes
you
I could
got
get up to
7.
sometimes I could get up to like 5 or 6, and once or twice I did get long combos. But
What was holding me back is I kept switching weapons, and I was like trying to use the two-handed weapons. And as it turned, it's just a really bad idea if you ever play this game. Like, you should just like stick to the one-handers and stick to a stable class. Because
Yeah.
at some point, I made that own realization. I'm like, I'm not making any progress, so I kept using swords and daggers, and then I could do like
Yeah.
I could do a 20 chain if I felt like it, because I'm like trying to time the same attack.
Yeah.
The timings are like
Mhm.
aggressively weird for each weapon type. It's like Legend of Dragoon type stuff,
Yeah.
and I
And the
just, like,
spell
I don't
timing.
know why. It's so cruel.
The spell timings are so bad.
Yeah,
for,
there,
like, the
there's
The
defense.
final boss made me laugh. Actually,
Yeah, no, it's fucked.
the best example of it.
Yeah, I didn't finish the game because the final boss has a like desperation move, and if you fail the defend action on that, you're basically dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's likely you'll just get.
Especially if you haven't been lucky with your stat rolls, which, by the way, random
No,
stat
like
growth.
it straight up does like more HP than you can have in a first run.
It plays like a whole like a Squaresoft animation that
Yeah.
normally the main character gets to do this move, like the big summon move.
Yeah,
the kill
like
you
you're
move.
watching Eden in FF8, just like
Yeah,
damn.
and it does a close up. It does a close up of Ashley's face when you're supposed to do the timing. And that's what makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Because you can't do the timing, the exclamation just pops up when you die.
And it's literally like that one button press or the entire boss fight, which is not by any stretch of the imagination easy or a short boss fight.
Up till that point, I had literally no trouble because like it's the end of the game. Everything is going to be lost to the void when you beat the game. I was just like, I'm going to throw literally every curative I have at this fucking problem.
I mean, I just couldn't, because the second phase of the final boss, the one that has the desperation move, is really slippery, and I couldn't get in range to damage him enough.
Yeah, like I just jumped at him when he started coming at me, and it threw off the timing enough that I was able to get hits in.
Huh.
Oh wow.
Okay.
I never tried that.
Yeah,
I just
like,
ran around in circles and waited, and my buffs would keep expiring, and I was like,
the other thing I did,
so...
the other thing I did was like, because you can't fucking do anything until he's on his way. I just waited until he started glowing red. Now, just like, okay, now it's time to buff and put the magic ward up, and and then leap at him, throw myself at this harlot. What a
we'll
fucking
talk about
line.
the visual design of the characters as well, because we have to. My God. But yeah, so it is. I mean, in a way, it is an example of that classic kind of Japanese RPG tension of these people mostly made turn-based games, and as the technology improved, they wanted to make more real-timey games, and they made a bunch of really fascinating hybridizations of turn-based and real-time, which the most famous is ATB.
But I will also say, like, I have gestured at this before. Early Tales games especially have like a limitation to what you're allowed to do with your combos, and that constitutes a turn in a different like derivation of the idea of transforming a turn to an action-based game.
Yeah, like and like that process of hybridization goes all the way back to at least the SNES, and it continues all the way through to at least the Xbox 360. And we talked about it in a bunch of contexts there.
Hell, it's alive and well in the Souls games, baby. That stamina bar is your turn.
It is in a way, yeah. But like the Vagrant Story really is those two things meeting in the middle. Like that, it's right slap bang in the middle of that kind of very false binary, and it feels it because it feels incredibly janky, bluntly.
Yeah. My
I liked a
favorite.
lot of it. I enjoyed playing a lot of the game, especially when I was using a guide, so I knew what tools to use.
Yeah,
Um,
the honestly, my favorite very common annoyance in this game was trying to mash the attack button before you got hit with an enemy who was desperately trying to attack you and accidentally mashing it into their turn and losing your defense. Like,
yes.
that just happens every time.
Just all the
I've done-
time.
I've done that.
Yeah. If you
I
watch my
actually
VODs every fucking time, I never get to do defense actions.
I played the game without a walkthrough for a while, which is it's definitely an experience. I had
Yeah.
to use a walkthrough once I got to the Abandoned Mines B2, which is wow, just what a great
Yep.
Sounds
dungeon
about
name.
right. I
Because
did
like
that.
once the game starts branching, I just really didn't know where to go, and I could have just looked at every single map and made my own decision, but
Yeah,
it started to become
that's
really
it is very much a game where if you really enjoy figuring out a game methodically by trial and error, there is so much in this game for you.
yeah.
But also, it's going to be 1,000 hours of playtime.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't like games like that the best times.
We will eventually cover a Castlevania. This is one of those games where, like, with a lot of polish, it would take a lot of polish for me to make me say this was a like good game. But like, this is like Yasumi Matsuno trying to do a Castlevania ish.
Mm.
And I say that not just because the plot is basically what ended up becoming the Aria of Sorrow plot. But like it's got that sense of progression where sometimes you'll just have to go find a dead end that has a key item you need in it because something else is blocking your way. Except
I will say
none of the abilities come from like exploration, so it's just kind of weird, except for teleportation. Like,
yeah, all the things that unlock progression are you fight a boss.
yeah.
And you do like you are going around collecting tools that will let you fight bosses because the bosses so specifically require you to stack tools of a particular type. But it doesn't have that kind of movement ability portfolio that we associate with like the classic kind of Castlevania or Metroidvania format.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Leroy, you were saying something.
no, I was just gonna say that dungeon crawlers also it's pretty common for you to need to return to previous floors and stuff in order to find new things. Like
Yeah.
Wizardry does it, which is a big touchstone.
Yeah,
I think even for this game.
and in a way, the crafting system is quite SMT-ish. You know, before every boss, you have to go and fuse the right demons. This, you have to go and assemble the right weapons with the right gems and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so for as distinctive and strange as the end result is, and like if you are interested in Japanese RPG history and you hear Vagrant Story is a cool, different, interesting game, you should go and have a look at it. You will play it, and your first response will probably not be to think in terms of all these similarities it has to other games.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure does sit in that design tradition. And it is very easy to pick out things before and after that it's related to. All the while, it nevertheless being distinctively kind of Matsuno imprinted, right? Like it's like, and in some ways it's difficult to describe how it's like, but it's like Tactics Ogre and it's like FF Tactics, and Final Fantasy 12 is a bit like this. In terms of like the same kind of, Final Fantasy 12 has the same kind of aspiration to spatial coherence that Vagrant Story does,
Mm-hmm.
and which now gets very much celebrated in the Dark Souls conversation. Dark Souls 1, one of the Dark Souls 1 versus Dark Souls 2 things is Dark Souls 1 is celebrated because it really is one place and it's all planned out so it all fits together, whereas Dark Souls 2 cheats on that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a cachet on that spatial coherence, which is ideological to Western games, where again it's that thing of the game is trying to hide the fact that it's maths and pretend that it is teleporting you to an alternate world and giving you the experience of being there. And like Vagrant Story has that, and I would guess that was a major component in its cult status. Is just the real and like it works in Vagrant Story because Leomond, like Anor Londo in Dark Souls, has a really strong sense of place. You know, it feels like a place and a particular kind of place.
Yeah, and something that assists that is every room has a really fucking exquisitely silly name to go with
The
it.
names are so
It's
good.
so
I love
it's
that.
so silly. It's like I literally could not remember any of them because they're all
Yeah.
just like so fucking purple. But the part of the thing is like sometimes a room will just be named like about a thing that happened here, or like a feeling it represents, and it's just like, okay, that's a little
And
much.
it's really interesting. That point particularly is really interesting in relation to Final Fantasy XII, which has the same thing. But in Final Fantasy XII, the room names all start out as kind of plausible, right? It's like, Rabanastre, the different sections of Rabanastre have names that areas of a town would have.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go out into the desert, and each name is like, oh yeah, I can see how the people of this city would name this kind of landmark this. But as you get further out into the game and you go more and more into like mystic ruins and ancient sites and holy sites and so on, the names get more and more esoteric and they become more and more like the names from Vagrant Story.
Yeah,
And
like even okay, I pulled up a walkthrough. I just want to list a couple of things from the first real zone of the game. Like you start the game proper in the room titled Entrance to Darkness, and then you go into the workers' break room, the Hollow Struggle, Smoke Barrel Stair, Wine Guild Hall, Wine Magnate's Chambers, Fine Vintage Vault, and then Chamber of Fear.
yeah.
And then,
It's
like,
almost-
3 rooms later, it's The Rich Drown in Wine and the Room of Rotten Grapes. It's just like, okay, what?
It's almost like a 90s text adventure game at that point. Like, you are in the...
Yeah.
I can't remember them because they're too... But yeah.
It's so good. I love it. I really genuinely, like, I don't know that I feel like I have a read on it in a critical sense. Like, I can't describe what it does for the experience, especially because I feel like if you were playing it without a guide,
You wouldn't ever process that because you'd just be moving the spaces.
Well, no, you'd have to process it because you'd have to spend so much time in the map mapping places, but it would feel so obstructive
Yeah.
to have so few of the names be informative.
I don't know. Sanity and Madness perfectly fits the Iron Crab boss fight.
I mean, true, but only when you actually know that there's a boss fight and it's a giant crab. But it's certainly like
they're all very evocative, but not useful.
It's a tone thing, and again, like this has been a constant thing over the run of our podcasts. I love a game that is just tone, and this game is so much tone, and I will forgive it so much because of its tone.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, okay, where the soul rots, very useful. The atrium, actually useful. The second or the third and second to last rooms of the game. Like,
yeah.
My soul do be rotting though.
God, ain't it just after the fucking final boss?
That should have been your intro. Should have been my intro. Anyway, all of that is to say that, like, while we can absolutely locate this in a set of both Japanese game design traditions and broader game design traditions, because doubtless, that aspiration towards realism is not distinctively Japanese; it's a broader thing, or towards naturalism that leads to that kind of real space, semi-real time clash.
Mhm.
Like it also has Matsuno's stamp, and like quickly on auteur theory. So auteur theory, I probably don't need to explain this, but I'll be quick. Auteur theory comes out of French film criticism in the 50s and 60s. It's one of the first serious attempts to like theorize filmmaking from a quasi-academic standpoint. These are film theorists who are primarily interested in the kinds of decisions about how a film is going to end up that a director would make. And so to them, the director is the central figure of the film, and auteur is the French word for author. And their claim is that the director has the kind of creative role relative to the film that an author does relative to a book. So the problem, auteur theory is when the director of a game like is famous.
Yep.
That's not a bad way of summarizing the issue.
Yep.
But yeah, so the like original auteur theory sidelines a whole bunch of people like editors and set dressers and costumers and cinematographers and blah blah blah. But video games has always kind of reached towards film for legitimacy. And the almost the first class in a film 101 class is going to be here's auteur theory, this is what it was used for. And then the second class will be, if the course is any good, the second class will be, and here's why we don't just talk about auteurs anymore and why we try to talk about other stuff. But definitely, like, I think there's a press filter that exists across the Pacific that really kind of structurally creates auteurism, because the Western games press can't interview that many Japanese developers on any given game. You'd often only one, and that will usually be the director or the producer. So we only know one name per game. That really is conducive to the development of an auteur theory, particularly about Japanese games. We kind of already talked about this with like Square is associated with Sakaguchi, and ever since Sakaguchi left, there's been a battle about are any of his successors equal to his legacy or whatever. And like the Hideo Kojima story is absolutely the story of people really trying to like lean into auteur theory. So it's important to be really careful about how we use auteur theory concepts, and like we've spent an hour talking about Yasumi Matsuno, and I'm not done talking about Yasumi Matsuno at all. But at some point, descriptivism has to win out, and we have to be able to talk about, here are things that are distinctively combined in Matsuno games. Like Matsuno takes this toolkit that also other people have taken and does a set of things with it that other people don't do. And in that, you can compare what he does to Sakaguchi, you can compare what he does to Tetsuya Takahashi, to Akitoshi Kawazu, to Tetsuya Nomura, all of whom come through kind of the same system. Slightly, they're not all at the same time, but it's pretty closely in sequence. And they all take parts of the Japanese RPG design tradition, and they all make different games. And it's not always the case that you can instantly recognize it, but several times I remember in the original run when we were looking at Square games, one of us would say, so and so had a role on this game, and it's like, oh, that explains so much. Even like even Kawazu on FF12, it's like, oh, once you know that Kawazu stepped in to finish that game off, yeah, I see how that happens. And both the fact that the reportage about Japanese games necessarily focuses on individual kind of director producer figures, and therefore is auteuristic, and that shapes the wider discourse, and the fact that these are real human beings who do carry fascinations and techniques and ideas from project to project, contribute to the necessity of talking about this, even though it is a loaded discourse which can create all kinds of problems. Can lead us to overlook things, like, for example, this was going to be a cool segue, and then I misclicked. Where are we? Come on.
I love how this was like supposed to be short, and it's like very nuanced and
Well, I have literally been in classes where this took an hour.
yeah. No,
But,
I like this breakdown too. Because the
yeah.
thing about
So,
auteurs, it's like obviously it's marketing now. Obviously, it's just like
yeah.
the capitalist legacy of bosses, but it's also a theory of labor too. So it's like, how do you untangle both of these threads? You just kind of have to accept them both.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to pick out, just to kind of illustrate the point, a huge thing that unites particularly Matsuno's later games is the music. If you listen to Vagrant Story and the Final Fantasy Tactics soundtrack and the Final Fantasy 12 soundtrack, you will almost think you're hearing the same piece of music at times. Guess what? They have the same composer. The composer is not Matsuno, it's Hitoshi Sakamoto. And it's just that Matsuno took that guy with him from project to project because he liked his work. He's like, I want this guy because this guy does a really good job of bringing my vision and my ideas to life.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that lots of famous film directors who are celebrated as auteurs take the same editor from project to project. The editor plays a huge role in the actual filmic product, but the director gets the credit. So that's auteur theory. And that's good. I'm glad that there was someone who hasn't heard this before, because I'm sort of used to thinking of anybody who's interested enough in this stuff to listen to us probably already knows all these kind of sort of 101 concepts from all these different kind of arts disciplines. And of course, lots of people who are in games don't. And I would guess that a lot of the reason that mainstream Western games journalism has fallen for this stuff is because they're not coming at it from a like arts theory background, because that's a really niche background that only a certain kind of person can afford to have. I happen to be that kind of person, which is why I can talk about it.
I mean, there's also like a disinterest in developing that sort of background because of assorted reasons, but also just like gamer pride. A phrase that I shouldn't utter under any circumstances, but you know what I mean.
The idea that games companies have pushed very hard that games are unique and distinct and not continuous with other art forms, except where they can steal a concept like auteur theory to use in marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say games academics have pushed that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, like games academic. Oh no, it's actually really important to say a particular faction of self-identified games academics across that line. Lots of people who work on games are not within that system, and going to academic games conferences is hilarious these days because you get two completely different groups of people who have to be academically nice to one another, but like just can't even talk to each other sometimes because they don't have any shared frame of reference for what it is to theorize a cultural object.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of an outsider to both of those traditions, so I'm completely lost when I go to those things. Anyway, the reason for like talking about auteur theory is I want to I think we chewed over the mechanics pretty well. I want to talk about plot, and I want to talk about story and world building and stuff, because even more than the mechanical kind of really ambitious jankiness that characterizes Matsuno's big games is the kind of story he's interested in telling. This is what drew me to Final Fantasy 12 and has anchored Final Fantasy 12 as one of my favorite games. It's the thing that I like about Matsuno games when I like them, and it's the thing that disappoints me about them when it's Final Fantasy Tactics and it flushes it all down the tubes after the first chapter. But Matsuno is a fantasy storyteller, in the same way that we would say Tetsuya Takahashi is a science fiction storyteller. But Matsuno tells a different kind of fantasy story to the kind that we are used to seeing in video games. Almost all video games are fantasy to some degree or other. And a lot of the ones that aren't are the kind of science fiction that is very fantasy adjacent, like Xenosaga, for example. But they are generally a kind of fairly fast and loose adventure fantasy kind of storytelling. And Matsuno, more than I think any other developer I know, really leans into fantasy as a genre about medieval politics. He's really interested in a thing that was becoming popular in actual fantasy fiction at the time. In fantasy fiction, you get the early generations of stuff, your Tolkien, Donaldson, those kinds of things. Then in the 80s, you get like the breakout of kind of very, very archetypal, morally simplistic genre fantasy. Ray Feist is in this, for example. That's the example I know best. Terry Goodkind, yeah, absolutely. And like it is. I'm shortcutting a bunch of stuff by saying it's fantasy as a yuppie genre, but it is fantasy as a yuppie genre. It's absolutely fantasy of the Thatcher Reagan era. And there were writers working in that period who weren't doing that. Gene Wolfe, for example, is way, way weirder and way more out there than most of that stuff. This is kind of where the Dragonlance stuff comes from. To give you an example of that done well. Like that kind of heroic fantasy, morally simplistic heroic fantasy done well. The 90s come on, and you get the turn towards what is called grimdark, the original kind of use of grimdark as a term, with Janny Wirtz and Robin Hobb, and most famously George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones, who was late on the scene. I will bang the drum about this forever. George R.R. Martin was late to the party and was not the innovator. He was just the big success because he was the most misogynistic. But Matsuno seems to care more about that kind of fantasy storytelling, that 90s kind of fantasy storytelling as it is in the West, versus the more 80s Conan the Barbarian, cinematic Hollywood kind of stuff. And so Final Fantasy Tactics gets celebrated for its first chapter being a story about nobles having a war, and some of the soldiers from the war mutiny and become bandits and kind of rebels or people who are trying to kind of overthrow the aristocracy or resist the aristocracy or live a life separate from the control of the aristocracy, and you get sucked into you are a noble who gets sucked into a conflict, and in that conflict you see the evils of the aristocracy. And Final Fantasy 12 is really fixated on like the Shakespearean question of the legitimacy of kingship and what it takes to actually secure a legitimate succession in a medieval culture. What does the actual heir have to do to prove that they are the actual heir and to legitimize their ascension to the throne? And in Vagrant Story, Vagrant Story is interesting because you play a secret agent. Like, you work for a thing called the VKP, which is so close to KGB in terms of its overall affect and what they do. And just to like 3-letter agencies in general, that it's impossible not to think of you as you're playing like a secret. You're playing like a Jason Bourne character, really.
Except
right down to the
sluttier.
memory issues. Except sluttier.
Yeah.
And you're on a mission from a state organization. You are caught up in a web of conspiracies between the state and the church and an aristocrat and a cult. But it's really underlying all that is a deep interest in how different institutions interact and constrain the behaviors of their people, and the mutual incomprehension that exists between institutions and their people. Right? Nobody in Vagrant Story really knows what their commanders want or what their subordinates want, and it allows for a breadth of political complexity, which is really juicy.
I think there's even a breakdown across or like inter-organization too, right? Because Merlos and Ashley and Rosencrantz, they really don't have a lot of ground either, despite supposedly coming from the same background.
Yes, yeah, like that's the other thing as well. Is like it's interesting in how institutions work, but it is also interested in the fact that they work through people who seldom are fully aligned with them.
Mhm.
Often in like classic fantasy games, there's the Dragon Quest thing, right? Where every town, you can speak to the town in the personage of its mayor, or like eventually you get to the castle and you can speak to the country in the personage of the king. In Vagrant Story, that never happens, and in Matsuno games, that typically doesn't happen. There will be kings, and they will do things, and you will interact with them, but also the faction that they are king of will always be internally diverse and internally fractious. Unity is not a simple thing, and no faction ever simply stands for something. Tactics Ogre, which I'm playing at the moment, there's like 4 factions, and they are just nation states. They're not. It's not like one is the Fire Nation and one is the Air Nation, or one is the Good Nation and one is the Bad Nation. One is the nation with the slaves, and one of the nation is the one that gets taken as slaves. All of those kind of elements show up in how they're constructed, but none of them. You can't reduce any of the factions to a shorthand. You can't even really say like, oh, this is the faction whose side I'm on. Because they all betray you, basically.
I mean,
That's my summary. My plot summary for Tactics. Everyone betrays you.
except you're allowed to forgive them, and if you do, you'll stick with them because fucking the route decision is: do you want to join in on this massacre? No, that sounds like you're on the chaos route, buddy. Do you want to get off the chaos route? No, okay. Like that.
Yeah.
That is the entire routing. Is actually how much authority do you respect? And it's just
Yeah. Will you ever do what you're told when doing what you're told is obviously genocide?
Yep.
But like, Vagrant Story might be the zenith of that because it is so intricate in terms of the alliances and in terms of the people that are there. As you bobble around this city, you cross paths over and over again with a bunch of different characters, and they all have their own agendas. You never get the complete picture of any one of their agendas. None of their agendas are simply the same as yours or opposite yours. And they all come from institutions outside of the city that have different stakes in what happens there.
I think cross paths is almost generous because Ashley sometimes for those isn't even present. He like does Farsight or he scries them or something.
Yeah, he has clairvoyance where he can watch through his agent buddy's eyes and listen in on convos.
He is like the perfect voyeur, but he's actually like rarely present for these interactions.
And the one time that he still accidentally voyeurs and gives himself away.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe it's better to say you see crossings of paths.
Yeah.
And that is a very Matsuno thing where, like, video games are so solipsistic so much of the time. Like, everything revolves around the player, and Matsuno has never been afraid to cut away from you to spend a scene looking at the behavior of characters who think you are ants, who have no regard for you at all. It's really striking in Final Fantasy 12, because Final Fantasy really is that. This game is about a character. It's about Cloud or Squall or Zidane or Tidus. And then in Final Fantasy 12, part of the point, it's about Ash, but Ash is often powerless and irrelevant, and it has to pan away. It has to cut away. It has to go and look at the villains, what they're up to. It has to go and look at what's happening to the government of Arcades, what the judges are doing, and Tactics Ogre naturalizes that by giving Ashley this power of like clairvoyance or telepathy, but it's the same thing. It's like, you are not the only agent in these games. Is maybe the simplest way to put it. Lots of people have agency and are themselves bobbling around doing their best to figure out what's going on, and they don't know either. Like, they might have more information than you, or they might have different information than you, but nobody has all the information
except maybe Sydney.
I feel like
maybe
I feel like Ashley has the least amount of agency too, which is funny.
Yeah, like
the least amount of information and the least amount of agency.
Like, Sydney straight up shows up to exposit at Ashley multiple times, and he starts off the game by going, "Anyway, I'm your prey, come get me," and then fucks off.
True, actually.
Sydney is the personification of Dark Souls.
He just needs like a laugh. Like, fucking crestfallen knight laugh. Peace out into the darkness.
Yeah, like, so, and that too, the idea that you play as the character with the least agency, even though you are, you're the one with the gameplay agency, but
Yeah,
the
he's
character
still
has the least narrative agency. That's
he's
very
still the
Matsuno.
protagonist of the action, I guess, if that even makes sense. But
I think it's funny
none of
how
it matters.
I think it's funny that you say you have like the most gameplay agency, but you have to adhere to all the rules which say this enemy doesn't take damage from anything except this one knife that you have. Get fucked.
The number judge in the background.
That is video game agency. Video game agency is always like that. Video game agency
is so funny.
It's a type of negotiated like fake agency. I mean, it is agency. Vagrant Story purposefully like eschews, the party-based tactics. Like, it's not a game of choices, right? It's a game where there is a choice and you have to find it.
Yeah, it's not expressive agency. Which is the kind of agency that is so like celebrated in the West. It's not that.
You even have when I brought up party-based games because it even shows up in JRPGs too, where like there are different ways where you can approach a fight in most games. In Vagrant Story, that is probably not true.
Yeah.
There are like there's like a climb. There are things you can do, but there are things you absolutely cannot do, and the game still offers them as viable choices without like telling you this.
Yeah. The thing that I'm going to say is a dumb fucking nerd reference that only Leroy will appreciate. It's fucking Lancer's special move from Fate Stay Night. He like his spear finds a way to get to the stabby bit he needs to do, and he's just like, "Fuck it, I guess that works."
Yeah, Gaybulk.
Yeah, Gaybulk just like reverse the cause and effect. You're going to get stabbed. How do I do that?
Eventually,
that is Vagrant Story. It's one day we'll inflict Fate Stay Night upon you. Sorry.
No. This is a random lore observation, but it's kind of interesting to me that what Ashley ends up relying on the most are the grimoires. And the fiction doesn't really do much with this, but they're supposedly like the legacy of Mollenkopf and everything. And like Ashley does not really get stronger. Like you find better weapons and you have your buffs and stuff, but like other than that,
Yeah.
you're kind of just stuck with the spells you learn
Like
Yeah,
and stuff you find.
That is kind of like that post that I saw about Disco Elysium, and just like, yeah, I went into this game going, wow, they're just gonna let you use all these drugs for stat boosts without like an addiction mechanic, and then after doing a check for the first time after downing like a fuck ton of drugs, I realized there was an addiction mechanic. Like, yes, you rely on the power of the dark because it's the only thing that will make you hit certain bosses, and you need to.
It's the only thing
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say something there as well about the absurd frustration of the fact that your stat gains that you get for the closest thing to leveling up, which is defeating new bosses, are random reels that you have to stop at the right time, and the speedrunners just learn how to stop them on time, and I can't do it, and I
I
just
mean,
only
I'll
get
be
HP.
frank. I don't think the intention is for you to stop at the right time.
No, I don't think it is.
I think the intention is to dole out HP, and you go, "Oh, okay."
The intention
But you
is
could,
yeah.
you could get strength, but you won't.
Like all
Yeah.
slots, it's to make you feel the near miss and go, oh, but next time I'll get strength plus 3.
Yeah.
I guess I forgot you do get real stable stat boosts. They're kind of they don't make a big difference, but they add up. You know, with the potions you find. You have to
Yeah.
actually find them too, which is very Dark Souls. You have to like go out of your way to map.
Yeah.
Make sure you're doing a good job mapping the place out to find the stuff.
And then sometimes early on there will be a spell that you just like don't get because it's in a weird little loop that like stops the platforms from moving for a second.
Oh yeah, I missed that spell, and then I was very incensed when I got to the final dungeon. And there was that one platform that's just like.
Did we
That's
all
just
miss?
like
Did we all miss? The
No.
I
spell?
guess we all missed it.
No,
Oh no, you got it, Val.
I was using a guide
No,
at that point. I was just like,
Oh, you got it.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
was
why I
using a
even knew
guide.
that fucking thing existed. Like
that one cloud stone that's like doused in tin cans of Red Bull. Like I was like, wow.
The room where there's 3 in sequence and you have to like use the momentum.
Yeah,
because
that's the room.
it
Yeah,
has. We haven't mentioned that it has a physics simulation.
yes,
for some reason.
this
Like,
fucking game has block pushing puzzles and platforming, and it has better platforming consistency, if not feel, than a lot of games that I've played.
Yeah, we should also say, and I think this is a good jumping off point for it, even if we don't spend much time on this. The technological achievement of making this piece of software is mind-boggling.
Yes.
Like,
for all the complaints I will have about how the game runs and processes things, and how, God, I wish there were more quality of life features, it's fucking impressive for a PS1 game.
yeah, that they made a game look like this on PS1 with the level of motion capture involved to get all the character acting right, with the richness of detail in the textures and environments, the quality of the sound. It is just mind blowing on the PS1. It could be a PS2 game, and in that way, it's very like Final Fantasy 12, which is similarly mind blowing by the standards of PS2 games.
Even if everyone sounds like they're in a tin can sometimes.
Even if everyone sounds like they're in a tin can.
Audio is hard to compress.
Yeah. But like it's worth at least looking at this game for what the technology was able to do. Although playing it on an emulator, like if you're playing it on a good emulator on good hardware, which I wasn't when I streamed it, you are getting something like that is quote unquote performing better than it would have on original hardware. This was a problem because I upgraded my PC halfway through towards the end of playing the game, and the game ran so much more smoothly and so much closer to a consistent 30 frames a second that I couldn't do the button input timings anymore because it changed the button input timings because the emulator was running 10% faster. And yeah, like the not only are all the textures hand shaded, there are also multiple different shaders for different lighting conditions. It's wild that they got this to run on a PlayStation 1.
It really is.
And that bears saying. And like the difference that the mocap work makes, particularly. I can't think of any other game from that period that looks anything like as good in terms of how the characters move. Final Fantasy X in-engine character animations do not look this good. They're stiffer, they're flatter, they have less detail. Obviously, the pre-renders in Final Fantasy X are better, but like, if you think about the laughing scene, for example, or the scene on the beach when Tidus arrives in Besaid with Waka, or any of the big crowd scenes, they are so much more what I would expect of a PlayStation 1 game on the PS2 than, any cutscene at all in Vagrant Story. All of which have incredible mocap work and just brim with life as a result. All the monster designs look great. The bosses that you fight, mind-blowing levels of detail and motion and life to them.
They need to look great because you're going to see them in 12 different colors.
This is true.
Mm-hmm.
They do reuse a lot of the boss designs. And yeah, like the direction is good too. It's again, there are things that feel truly cinematic about this game. Like somebody who knows about film worked on this game. And that also shows up in Final Fantasy 12.
Mm-hmm.
People make constant Star Wars comparisons with that game, which are only tangentially justified. What they really mean is, yeah, it looks like a film director shot these cutscenes.
And the only film director they have on hand to reference is, George Lucas.
Well, there are superficial things.
I mean, I don't know. There is a specific type of nerd who probably didn't watch many movies past Star Wars, who probably instigated a lot of these discussions.
And here we go. Jun Akiyama, video game event director, best known for his work on Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy 12.
Good stuff.
Yeah, he was in charge of all aspects of the cutscene, such as cinematography, camera movements, character facial expressions, and body movements. And the voice acting, actually. Yeah, so like there again is somebody that Matsuno took with him, and you can see the legacy of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway, so a lot of the technical achievements are really strong. A lot of the kind of the techniques that are used to tell the story are exemplary for a game of that period. What is the story that it tells? Someone who's played it more recently than me.
I mean, the story that it tells is Ashley Riot in pursuit of a hostage situation gone worse than expected, follows Sydney Losterot into the city of Leomond to try and rescue the Duke Bedorbo's son, Joshua, who is being held by Sydney, who also turns out to be the Duke's wayward son. Yes. And in the process, it is revealed that Ashley was not the simple, like, Kingsguard he was thinking himself to be, but instead suffered VKP, basically brainwashing into being a different person because he felt so bad about a murder he did of innocence. And beyond that, the city of Leomond is a wellspring for the dark, which essentially means that everyone who comes into contact with it, if they have like a supernatural ability, or like like if they have the potential, their supernatural abilities are awakened. Both Ashley and his partner Malose are affected by this over the course of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely, with Vagrant Story, one of the things that is going on is a version of that post Final Fantasy VII turn in Japanese RPG storytelling where it has to be psychoanalytic.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be, here is a character who is traumatized, and hidden in the sealed memories of their trauma is some truth that is revealing about what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Um,
In this
yeah,
case, this just ends up being the method that the game hands you for learning new battle abilities.
yeah, like in many ways, Ashley has less of a personal stake in events in Leomond than
Everyone
mostly
else.
turns out to be the case. You know, if you compare that to Squall in Final Fantasy VIII, for example, where a whole chunk of the exposition of the game and like the backstories of the characters is in memories that Squall has lost due to excessive GF use. Yeah, this is very different.
Yeah.
But like, so how many factions are there? There's the
There's the VKP.
well,
There's
I mean, the VKP is an agency of the state, right? And I forget what the
ostensibly.
state. Yeah.
The state's just referred to as the parliament.
Yeah, Parliament.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So
That's how it's referred to. There's the parliament. There's the church.
there's the Parliament, there's the church, there's Mullenkamp.
And Mullenkamp is the cult.
Yes.
And it's implied like Duke Barbados is like independently, like he has sway over the parliament, but he's also like his own faction. He's just that
and
powerful.
indirectly
Yeah,
with
it's
Mullenkamp.
very much like there's the parliament, which is the government, and then there's aristocrats who participate in the parliament but also have aristocratic interests that the
Mhm.
parliament exists to kind of moderate or balance between, which
Yeah.
again goes to that thing of like Matsuno cares about how medieval politics worked.
Yep.
But
So over the course of things happening in the game, it's revealed that Ashley has been baited in by Sydney because Sydney believes he is the appropriate vessel for the darkness that is welling up in the wellspring of Leomond.
And Sydney is the current. Did we say he's the current leader of Mullenkamp?
Oh no,
The cult?
he
we
is
may
the
or may
head of
not
the
have
cult.
done, but yeah,
He's the leader of the
It
cult.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed that both Romeo Guildenstern and Jan Rosenkrantz are Guildenstern is the church representative basically in the
Yeah.
city. He's leading forces trying to fight Mullenkamp. And then
he's sort of a paladin, really. Like
he's a crusader for sure.
Yeah, he's a religious knight type character.
Yeah.
And like then there's my brain's just gone. Rosenkrantz is the one in Shibari, right?
Yes. That's
The
Romeo.
outfits in this game is that like he shows up and he is clearly playing. He's trying to play all sides against the middle.
Mm-hmm.
He tells Ashley he's from the VKP, but he's known to Rosenkrantz and seems at times to be helping or hindering Rosenkrantz.
He is
And he's
Rosenkrantz,
also-
you mean Guildenstern.
It's like,
That's so funny because I just saw the death of Rosenkrantz and Guildenstern.
Yeah.
And the joke, yeah, they can't keep each other straight.
It's such a good movie.
They don't know who's who.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who's who.
mm,
Anyway, yeah, no. So Yeah, like he's playing everyone against each other, and eventually turns against Sydney as well, who is one of his accomplices, because he might have been a risk breaker at one point, and ostensibly he worked with Ashley, but he is trying to gain the power of Lamon for himself.
Yeah.
And then he dies fucking somewhere. And then Guildenstern takes the key to Leomond, which is the rude inverse. It's a giant tattoo on Sydney's back. He just skins it right off him, and then climbs to the top of the cathedral at the center of Leomond, and becomes the focus for the power of the darkness. And then you beat it out of him.
Do we need to say? We probably need to at least say for listeners, rude is an old word for crucifix. So rude inverse is an upside down cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also the symbol of the game. It's going to be on the splash image for this episode because Ashley is holding a little pendant of it.
Yes. Or of Vagrant Story's version of it. Like,
yeah.
You know, if you use the word rude in its original context, ROD, it would not mean that, but it does in Vagrant Story.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a lot of there's this thing which is the key to the power of Leomond, and they're all trying to get it, and then they realize that it's not a literal key or even a literal object. It is bound up in Sydney's body, and then it gets taken to various other bodies.
I don't think the Shakespeare references are very meaningful, and I hardly think that the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern references, even outside of Shakespeare's use of them, are like I think it's just for flavor.
Well, I think it is worth noting. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are characters from Hamlet, by the way.
Yes.
And they're basically Hamlet's student roommates, who his dad has summoned to the castle to try to get Hamlet to stop being such a weirdo. Like, I think it is interesting that Matsuno is bringing in Shakespeare character names, because Final Fantasy in particular, and like Square games generally, and Japanese RPGs generally, have been magpies for Western mythology for years, right? You know, Shiva. Well, Shiva is not Western mythology, but it's appropriated mythology in the same way that the West appropriates mythology. And there's loads of Norse kind of Odin and Thor and stuff. I think it is interesting that Matsuno wants to bring in Shakespearean language, because one of the central questions of Shakespeare is what makes a good king. A lot of Shakespeare's histories are all about why. Shakespeare's histories are propaganda for Queen Elizabeth I. They're all about why Queen Elizabeth is a better monarch than all these other past monarchs. Why she inherits their good qualities and doesn't have any of their bad qualities and so on. But also the tragedies, almost all of them are about like Macbeth, King Lear, Hamlet, all about kings. And Matsuno must have spent more brain time on Shakespeare than most of his peers. And I think it's not so much that he picked Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because he thinks those two characters are like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in Hamlet. I did go and look up like the plot of Hamlet and how they figure in it, and the Tom Stoppard play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is kind of a pastiche, kind of satire kind of thing that takes those two characters from Hamlet and does all the things that happen to them off stage in Hamlet on stage, and
it is not quite that. It is really not. It's about them being stuck in a fucking time loop because of their characters. Like, that is entirely not. You did not get the correct vibe.
I think both of those things happen actually. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
like that's the absurdist ending. But when you're watching, like the scenes, it's like they're weaving in and out of the play the whole time.
yeah, and I'm not. I have never seen the play, but my sister is a Shakespearean dramatist, has literally directed Shakespeare plays, loves that play, and talked at me endlessly about it when I was a teenager. And the time loop stuff didn't really figure in her account of it anything like as much as this is a way for Tom Stoppard, a 20th century dramatist, to use Shakespearean characters to interrogate what Shakespeare was doing theatrically.
I understand that, but also it drastically misrepresents the vibe to not deal with the absurdist part of the play's concept, I think.
The
Anyway,
idea with the time loop is kind of interesting because it keeps asking, like, I'm now derailing, I'm sorry, but it keeps asking, like, why are people drawn to tragedies and
yeah.
stuff.
Um,
I found like a lot of weird parallels between that play and Vagrant Story, but they're not intentional. It's just like
Yeah.
it's just because they're deriving from Shakespeare.
yeah, like Vagrant Story is definitely not making the kind of meta moves that Tom Stoppard was. But I don't think that we should try to read Romeo Guildenstern and Jan Rosencrantz in this game as like iterations of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in either Shakespeare or Stoppard. They are the names are there to flag up that Matsuno or someone he works very closely with is a Shakespeare nerd, and that they are interested in some of the same things that preoccupy Shakespeare. Which obviously like that plays so much into this kind of caring about the reality of aristocratic politics in the Middle Ages. Where if you think about Final Fantasy's use of Odin instead, that's signaling an allegiance to not just a different set of stories, but a different kind of storytelling, right? Sakaguchi was interested in myth. Matsuno is interested in literature. Which it would be very easy to make that sound like that's a hierarchy. And I think there is a degree of that in the status that Matsuno has, right? Like Matsuno, people who are big Matsuno fans of the kind who made a stink about his departure from Square Enix, are going to position Matsuno as like a higher pleasure than the other Square Enix guys because they're doing, Nomura is doing a fucking Disney game, and Sakaguchi just wanted to cannibalize myth, and so it's an invitation to intellectual snobbery.
Someday I'll have to argue convincingly that Nomura is all Pomo, actually.
Sorry, say again.
I said sometime I'll have to argue convincingly that Nomura is all Pomo.
Oh,
like he gets pegged. Yeah, he gets pegged as pop culture, but like he's playing with it.
Yeah, I absolutely like the negativity around like Nomura and Kingdom Hearts comes from a very chauvinistic place in a whole bunch of ways. And Nomura at his best is very, very playful. But like again, it's all that thing of like once Western discourse has succeeded in reducing these games to their directors or producers or lead developers, it can then set about reducing those developers to these kind of really simplistic hierarchical positions. That, like some of them are intellectualized and some of them are dismissed intellectually. And Matsuno is maybe even more than Kojima. Matsuno is perfect bait for that kind of activity. Kojima, you can talk about, well, okay, some of the movie references are a bit silly and low culture-ish, but there's a deep interest in the politics and there's a distinctive political perspective. Matsuno is quoting Shakespeare, and that carries such a strong cachet in our culture that people can use it to position Matsuno in a very, very elevated way. So I guess that is what the Shakespeare references end up doing for this game, and I don't necessarily think that's why Matsuno did it. I don't think he was trying to show. Maybe.
It's hard to say, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He could be flexing a little bit, like,
Yeah,
look.
flexing a little bit, but not flexing for the benefit of the West, because this game 2000 is before. It's before Square's beeline of games would have been looking to the West. This is still kind of your Xenogears, Chrono Cross kind of time, more than stuff they went on to make, like Last Remnant, for example, which very definitely was looking towards the West in a bunch of ways and sanded off a bunch of stuff that might have been interesting because of that.
I still don't remember much about the Last Remnant except the name is a label and it's plastered on Rush, who is the Lorax, the Last Remnant. He speaks for the Remnant.
you
What a
would
video
you
game.
would remember that.
Terrible curse.
So yeah, I guess that kind of that's the Shakespeare element here. So you've got the Parliament, the aristocracy, you've got the religious order, and it's not entirely clear whether Guildenstern is trying to is trying to seize the power of the dark for the church, or is using the church's resources to power his mission to seize control of the dark.
Well, it's even suggested Sydney has a third goal where he just doesn't want the dark to be used at all,
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it becomes increasingly clear as you go on that Sydney's priorities are maybe the most sympathetic set of priorities in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely feels like you're supposed to end the game mostly identifying with and sympathizing with Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Go ahead.
you first. Go ahead. Oh, me?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I was just gonna say, if Ashley's the protagonist of the action, then like Sydney is the protagonist of the fiction.
I can
I'm
kind
not
of agree with that.
sure, because I don't think that Sydney has to make narrative decisions, right? He still he has a position and he sticks with it, and he's trying to realize his agenda, but it is Ashley in whom the kind of factional question is posed. Like Ashley is the one being asked to make an alignment decision, not in like the simplistic like D&D alignment sense, but like you, the player, through the character of Ashley, are being asked to assess these different factions and their goals and rhetorics and come to a conclusion about which one you support. Like
I could see that read. I guess I was looking at it differently.
yeah,
Because
protagonist is a term with many meanings, but
yeah,
to
'cause
me,
I was
that's the one that.
well,
Go on.
first I was just thinking Sydney is closest to like a tragic figure that you would, if these illusions were taken seriously, Sydney is like,
Yeah.
I mean, the Hamlet, I guess. But then I was also thinking about the game as kind of a procession to, a determinate ending, like
Mhm.
the Final Fantasy VII kind of like this thing is happening to the character outside of their control because the game is a construct that only goes in one direction. So
Mhm.
of course, as a player, you're posed with like reconstructing this chronology and like figuring out what these different characters want. But Ashley only really does what Sydney wants at the end, at least. I don't feel like he made a meaningful decision.
I think I think that by the end he comes to agree with Sydney's desire to not have the dark and power in general misused, which is why he just fucking like he takes the power, deals with Duke Vidorba, I guess, is the thing, because like the entire thing sets off with like, oh yeah, a week ago, Ashley went to the city and he has now a week later been charged with the murder of the Duke. What happened in that week to change this nation-loving man, this patriot, from like a hound of the state to he killed the Duke?
Yeah, that's fair. The one thing that was like bugging me, I'm like, what do they mean by the story of the vagrant? But you give a good answer
Yeah.
of what that
So-
might mean.
I guess the way I'd put it is like this. Ashley goes in understanding his mission and his position in the world one way. And at the end, it is very clear that he has chosen to take up, even if he didn't have the practical choice of whether or not to do this, he has chosen to take up Sydney's project.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has, you know, there's a scene where Sydney is dying and Ashley is the one cradling him, and I don't think he says anything like "I will continue your work," but that's clearly the message. And he goes on to do what Sydney wanted done. Yeah, like that to me is you know, if we're talking about the values or the themes that the thing is trying to express, the protagonist is the character through whose choices or whose personal decisions about alignment those themes are explored, and that's why I would say that it is like Ashley's the one making decisions, even if you know Sydney is driving the action forward. That is a role that can be played by other people than the protagonist.
This is not true at all, but now I'm just thinking that Ashley is Malos and Sydney is Amalthus. The only person who'd think that.
Fucking Xenoblade 2, really? Did we have to?
I had to.
I was stunned for a second and couldn't place that.
Yeah, that's
What are
why I
those
said the
again?
game. That's why I
Just
said
speaking
it.
gibberish. Those names. They
Well, it's
mean
like,
nothing.
I know those names. Which fucking game are they from? I'd successfully blocked them from my mind, you bastard.
Welcome to Live Genre Chronicles. New trauma unlocked. You have recalled a repressed battle ability.
Fuck.
Anyway,
Anything else you want to say about this game?
they need to remake it. Leave everything visually the same, but like do a bunch of quality of life shit, please. Like,
Oh, God,
If
yeah.
there's just a macro that let you do like gambits to cast your buffs, oh my god.
yeah, or a
Just a
fucking
quick-
compass, or
a quick switch wheel for your weapons.
Yeah,
Because
that
you're
too.
carrying 6 weapons like Cloud in Advent Story, but you have to go all the way into the menu to change them.
Yep.
At first I was like, wow, this is like it's like heavy, it has a lot of weight to it. I'm kind of into it. And then like after doing it a million times, I was just like, no, never
Yeah.
mind.
Like, yes, it's heavy.
Also the
I need to
menus are
stop.
PS1 ass menus, so they are not crisp.
They are not
And
crisp. Oof.
they take a second to load up. It's just like whoop, just like
Yeah.
everything stops and you're just like,
Yeah.
And when you switch weapons, there's an animation that plays of Ashley sheathing the sword and then pulling out the next sword.
Yeah.
And it's like several seconds of animation. You just sit there, it's like, I am paused face to face with a dragon right now. It would feel so much better if this was like hold a button, push the stick in a direction, bam.
It would also be nice if you didn't lose your equipment buffs if you fucking swapped equipment. Like, that would be nice.
yeah.
Like, there are so many, like, fucking, oh my god, like, a better menu and, like, one quality of life pass would do this game
Yeah.
so fucking much for me. Like, for me, okay, this is the gamer complaint hour, but, like, it's a quote-unquote action RPG where, like, this guy, you don't know what kind of armor he has. You need to buff yourself up because you're not gonna hurt him very much if you're not buffed. Take a swing at him. Oh no. Either you're gonna miss or you do like 0 damage. Open the menu, equip a new weapon. Fucking the animation plays of him putting the sword away, pulling out a big stick. You close the menu. You go, oh, that's also like 0% hit chance. Open the menu again.
Yeah.
Like
You
4
can carry-
times.
You can carry 8 weapons, but you should never carry a full set of 8 weapons, because if you open a chest and it has a weapon in and you don't have room to pick up the weapon, you cannot pick up that weapon and it doesn't stay in the chest. It vanishes from existence.
Hey, guess what? You can disassemble things right from that screen. So if you have room in your blades and grips, you can. Also,
It's very possible that all of them are full, though, which happened to me.
Yeah.
Also, fucking when you're
because
combining...
you get a lot of equipment.
Yes. Because
relative to the number of inventory space.
Just make it
relative
so...
to even the number of blades and grips, you'll just get like
Yes.
repeats of the same stuff.
Also,
Yep.
fucking when you're combining blades, you have to combine blades, and there's like a logic to it. You don't feel the logic.
Yeah, I know.
Also, like, you know that SMT thing where it's just like, here's a demon. I'm gonna show you what you get when you combine with every other demon and just like a one list instead of needing to pop them in every time. Do that with the swords, please. Also,
Yeah.
don't make people pause when they have to put things in the chest. And pause and save. And what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I honestly gave up on fusion just because every time I looked at the fusion, it was a lower level weapon, and I'm like, they're all lower level weapons, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna just find another treasure chest. That weapon's gonna be better.
Yeah, I did very little fusion.
I did one serious bout of fusion near the end game because I was just like, I want to find out how hard it is to get a better staff because I have a shit staff and all of the rest of the boss strategies this guide has are magic based. So let's go do that. And it took me like 2 hours of grinding fucking Crimson Blades to get anything to drop that was useful, and I didn't even get the weapon that they said I should have.
Oh my god.
Also, like, I would love if this game actually let you play different builds. Like, start you off with a different Ashley. Like, and give you different stats. Like, that would be cool. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
And also
It
remove
has-
the reels. I will kill whoever put those in. Holy shit.
It has like a Squaresofty thing where there's this big list of things you can do, but they're really just not like the design never. It doesn't. There's no practical reason to use a lot of these things. Basically, like
They just pre-optimized the fun out of it for all the gamers. Like,
yeah, well, because you can only use one equipment buff and one like character buff.
Yep.
Then there's like a ton of other buffs that you just aren't going to put on. Of course,
Yeah,
it would
it's
be
not-
awful to have to cast every single one too. So
And you can't have enough MP to cast more than about 3
No.
buffs anyway.
Yeah.
But then you just like they like fill out the whole like list of every single buff you like ought to get or should get, but then you just don't actually use them.
That was also a
Yeah.
thing I was just like, wow, please don't do this. Every single element has a defense ability that will let you recover 50% of the damage you take. And those come in the same bundle of like unlock abilities as chain attacks. So like I literally didn't have Aqua Guard until the end of the game. And having to swap those out every time you fucking fight something with a specific element, it's just like, kill me now. Like, actually hit me for 1,000 damage and kill me, please.
Yeah.
I never even got the magic guard. Like I just forgot about it.
Oh god.
You don't like need it because you have the magic word spell, but I just never
Oh
had
right,
the
so
time
you-
action.
yeah.
I didn't have the
Also-
time action one.
Also, like, fucking, you get chain abilities and defense abilities from doing chain attacks, which,
Mhm.
you know, kind of nerfed Becky a little. Just a little.
Well, except that you can get some of the best, some of the optimal stuff very early on.
Yeah.
Like you can get temper and instill. You start off with heavy strike,
Fuck,
and
we didn't even talk about the fucking PP. Oh no.
Careful where you say that.
God.
Yeah. So weapons have durability and power
No,
increases with use.
they're called phantom points. Excuse you.
Oh, the Phantom Pain.
Yes, there's literally a battle ability, like a break ability called the Phantom Pain that uses the Phantom points on your weapon to do more damage.
The break abilities are a big nothing burger too. Like
Yep.
the requirements to get a new break ability is like kill 100 monsters. Like they expect me to go out there and whack goblins until I can like shoot a laser. Because you have to keep switching different weapon types. I had like one break ability per type. I was just like
Yeah.
utterly amazed by that system.
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
so many different systems that reward you for playing this game through like a dozen times, and
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
what kind of mad person would do that.
I
I
found them
think
online.
Yeah, I
like,
know. I don't want to know them.
it's a Matsuno thing that every system has to have all the possible combinatorial modes, even though you will mostly not want to do any of the combinations. Like Final Fantasy 12 has a million like basically useless abilities in it, like techniques and
True.
stuff. And
What,
you're
you
just
mean
going
you
to
don't
use
want to use fucking 1,000 needles? Or like the fucking thing that gives you more damage based on how far you've walked? Or what play time it is? Like,
so the thing is that obviously in speedruns, all of those things have their niche uses.
yeah.
So you know that they're viable tools, but also if you're a casual player, you're never going to find those niches.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was one time that I used sight unseeing to hit something when I was blinded. It was just like, okay, what the fuck is up with this game? I like it, but like, why? Why are you so much? So much nothing.
Well, that's how Matsuno, and like that is a legacy of him having made his name on tactical games, and like
Talk about Tactics.
Tactics Ogre just has an overwhelming quantity of stuff in it. Like every character can equip 7 items and 7 pieces of equipment, 4 items, 4 spells, 4 skills, and 8 finishing moves.
Which are just attack skills.
Yeah. And there's innumerable classes, and you can tame monsters, and you can craft gear. And the way you craft gear is you accumulate raw materials at random in the levels, and you refine those raw materials into like actual crafting materials at relatively low exchange rates, and then you can upgrade your weapons with crafting. But you have to get books of crafting for each different kind of weapon and material, and you have to get class marks, which are like tickets from killing units of that class in order to be able to transfer your units into the class. And then like ninjas have their own special family of magic, and dancers have their own special family of magic, and every conventional spell exists in every element as a different spell, and in like 3 different tiers, and it just results in there being a mind-boggling quantity of stuff in the shop. Basically.
I feel like the priority with some of this, even though it's super video gamey, it's also like even still trying to establish like a sense of place. Like, oh yeah, of course they would have all these things if they have these other things.
Hey Becky,
Even though you don't use them.
Do you want to hear the funniest part, Becky? They used to have level requirements on all the gear in all past versions, and also, the finishing moves used to use a different like bar, like a different gauge from MP, so you had to build it differently.
Oh, of course they fucking did.
Tactics
Of course
Reborn
they fucking did.
fucking did all that and then put tarot like put a bunch of buff and debuff cards on the field for no fucking reason and didn't tweak the AI at all. I think like it's so fucking funny. It's so awful.
Tactics Ogre Reborn is a mess. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying it a lot, except for like if you tune into my stream tomorrow, I might be completely walled. We'll see. But like it is a mess. Right. The last thing I want to hear about is specifically the relationship between this game and Dark Souls, and like how it fits into that history, because 2 things. One, because my interest in this game came through like Final Fantasy 12 and like Matsuno, I went into it not knowing very much about it and not knowing the kind of game it was in terms of being like a dungeon crawler, kind of action adventure-y, kind of RPG. And 2, the way the West treats Dark Souls is as if it kind of popped out of the ether fully formed without antecedents. And I know that's not true, and I know that the ways that Vagrant Story is like Dark Souls show that those design elements were floating around in the Japanese design space almost a decade earlier. So I think this is probably Leroy's topic. What can you tell us about the set of design lineages that lead to Dark Souls and how they pass this game by or go through this game?
Well, we've already talked a lot about tabletop, right?
Yeah.
And especially in Japanese RPGs, like a lot of the tabletop influence or stuff that people think might be tabletop inspired, there's a good chance it's all like there's a very good chance it might actually be wizardry inspired, or it's like, the same mixture, a same but different mixture, right? Where it's like wizardry and tabletop, but it's Japanese tabletop and the Japanese translation of wizardry type of thing going on.
Mhm.
Which the Japanese translation of wizardry is also different. It's like super high fantasy and serious and like Shakespearean almost. It's dour, unlike the the you know the Woodhead version of wizardry is like really goofy. It's like a I don't know, like a PC adventure game. But I mean, I guess I'll do the shorter version. I was thinking about how all these games are late, but um like the common ancestor for a lot of just first person explore games, what they call later immersive sims, or what we're taken to call dungeon crawlers now, even Metroidvanias, like a lot of them take not inspiration from, but they converge on like Ultima Underworld, basically. Which Ultima Underworld inspired Doom, it inspired Pathways into Darkness, it inspired System Shock, and it inspired Kingsfield. That's like a lot of branching points. And I think for Vagrant Story, I want to talk about Kingsfield probably, because Kingsfield is like directly iterating off of Ultima Underworld, and there are some tweaks to the presentation that makes Kingsfield more playable than Ultima Underworld, but I don't think that difference matters. I think like the biggest deviation from Kingsfield to Ultima Underworld is like in terms of how its fiction is structured. So like in Ultima Underworld, it's still like the dungeon is still like a problem, right? It's a place to be conquered. It's like a hall of gameplay things, and you're like the hero, and you got to solve all of it and figure it out and beat the big bad at the end. And instead, Kingsfield is like a dungeon without a problem. It has like a very short opening where it explains the protagonist is going into the royal catacombs, the titular Kingsfield, to chase after his father. And as you're looking through these catacombs, you never get closer to finding your father. So like Kingsfield takes what Ultima Underworld did and makes it something more psychological and even personal, I guess. The story of Kingsfield unfolds like very slowly and quietly, and it's left to the player to piece together chronology of everything that happened down there before you arrived. And so like you're piecing together the chronology and the conflict and the implication. So it's like figuring out why you're there is the reason you're there, which is very Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When
And so
was
like
Kingsfield, the first Kingsfield?
1993
Right, yeah.
or
So
1994. I don't know, but in that ballpark, it might be 1994. Very early. I think it's the same year as System Shock, which is interesting because System Shock is the one that gets all of, like everything I'm saying about the sense of place, and it's like this place is like naturalized in the fiction, I guess, and you kind of like figure out the story as you play and why you're there. All that's credited to System Shock when they came out the same year. But now, Kingsfield has gotten a lot of like retrospective, like, oh, this is where Dark Souls came from, which is funny. I mean, it's not even. It's a completely. The staff is not
Yeah.
1-to-1. Different people worked on Kingsfield than Dark Souls. But yeah, I mean, like they're playing with some of the same stuff structurally.
I'm just amused by the Wikipedia page. It did come out the end of 1994, so like
Okay, yeah.
like December 16th, and this game was initially planned as a title for personal computers before shifting to a PlayStation, which they felt had better specs. It was
But I believe that. I don't remember. I don't have the sources, but I remember reading that they saw Ultima Underworld at a trade show or something because it was being ported to Japanese PCs, and they were like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, type of thing.
hmm And apparently, it was developed in like 6 months, which is fucking wild.
Yeah. But yeah, so like as surreal as the catacombs are in Kingsfield, you also get the feeling that this is the whole contiguous place that has a function in the fiction. Like it's sparse. It's like it's lore droplets, but you find out that the king has been adding on to it, and the king has the king's legacy has like sort of changed it to what it was, what it used to be. And you do eventually like figure out what happened to your father, and then like you at the end you do become like more maybe like a Dragon Quest type character, and you fix everything, but it isn't apparent that's the goal of the game when you start out. And that actually felt very reminiscent of Vagrant Story, where you're figuring you're the it's more Vagrant Story leans more on intrigue, and the spy fiction stuff, but the process of playing the game is like still trying to like figure out what is going on. You're putting together this chronology while you're also just like in the muck and going slowly through and mapping through a bunch of like oblong rooms that look like a place, or like the dungeon terraforms the place itself, stuff like that. It's
Mhm.
it's 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 I think it's very like it's very singular. I think Becky said it. Like when you play the game, you're not thinking of any of its antecedents. It just feels like it just feels like its own thing, which is pretty true. I think it's like it digs really deep into maybe Zelda likes actually, like the isometric ones, and also like it's really reflexive of dungeon crawlers and the history of dungeon crawlers, and it puts them together with like Matsuno's own like writing fixations and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like it has those Zelda like standalone set piece puzzles. The block puzzles,
Absolutely.
I guess they start out kind of naturalistic. Like the first few that you meet, it's like, oh, here's a high ledge that's been caused by an earthquake, and also there's a bunch of crates here. See if you can stack them up in a way that actually gets you up the ledge. But as you go on, they get more and more just obviously video gamey towards the end. It's just like there is no intelligible reason for these objects to be arranged in this way or for them to be arrangeable in the way that you need to arrange them to actually solve the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of weird, fancy shit like frictionless blocks and magnets, and like, how did these things get here? I don't know. Weird magic cathedral. Uh,
The game's like power progression too is very Zelda-ish. I wouldn't like say it's like Zelda, but it reminds me of Ys and the Mana series, where it's like stuff you find is what makes you better, rather than like, I mean, get if you don't get the right grimoires, if you don't get the spells you need, Ashley's stuck. And some of it is on the critical path, and some of it
Yeah.
isn't, kind of thing.
Yeah,
mhm.
like it doesn't have the Zelda like really intense designedness of like there's one specific tool for this level and the level is teaching you to look for this tool and then use it.
Yeah, no.
Um in part because it's not as invasively designed, and in part because the there isn't the consistency of theming across any sequence of play. Like nowhere in the game is there like a fire level, an ice level. It's the closest, I guess. There's the Undercity, which is the undead area.
More than
Um,
usual, yeah.
Oh, this
yeah,
reminds me, I don't even know. I wouldn't ascribe too much meaning to this, but I thought it was interesting. That Vagrant Story starts in a wine cellar. And the Bard still actually starts in a wine cellar too, and it goes into a catacombs, and it goes to a sewers and a catacombs, and the progression is like very close. So I wondered if it was a reference.
Hmm.
The Bard's Tale is also an interesting one to pick out. It got a Japanese Famicom release, and it got a PC 98 release, but I think it's an interesting one to point out because it's like the first dungeon crawler after wizardry that set the mazes in real places. So like the town is a maze, which happens in Vagrant Story, and then
Mhm.
you go down to the wine cellar, which is a maze,
mm,
and you continue this logical progression until you end up at the wizard's tower.
mm. Yeah. I remember like we talked with when we did SMT3. We talked about how some of the towns were also levels in that, um, which obviously like SMT is very much in that like quote unquote dungeon crawler tradition.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Actually, like I noticed this because I've recently been I've been playing Wizardry: Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. I have to say the full title because I've talked about it a lot, but without playing it, it's not the same. And I've way prior, I played the first Megami Tensei, and the illusions would be hard to notice, but there's like a lot of like one-to-one references and a lot of like design things you can tell were just straight up like, okay, Wizardry did this, so we're doing it too. So yeah, it's really deep in there.
Maybe we will put Wizardry on the list. Sighs loudly
There
and eternally.
there is a playable version. There is a playable version on the PlayStation. It is very playable, and it's like so playable it'll surprise you because you'd think it. You expect something else. It's like honestly,
expect
it's
something else,
honestly,
alright.
it's honestly more playable than Eastern Odyssey.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, indeed. We'll have to put it on the list and have a vigorous debate about it.
Well,
I'm down. I actually love the game.
At the current rate of episodes, we might not get to it till like 2030 or something. So
Yeah,
I'll
we're
worry
going
about
a
it for a
little
while.
slow. I feel like we probably could have had this happen a little earlier, but we wanted to give room to breathe, and also none of us wanted to do anything because summer sucks. Everyone hates it. All my homies hate summer. We're all too hot to think.
Well, I did get pretty caught up in other projects and so on. Anyway, do we have any questions? People sent in questions. People want to ask questions in chat.
No one sent in any questions to my inbox. If anyone wants to ask questions in chat, we have time for that.
Yeah. But
we could just say next game is Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, and we'll be using that as probably a jumping point to talk about FromSoft, mech games, and other stuff.
We can also have a fun time talking about like the intersection between simulation and RPG because Armored Core is not what people would immediately think of as a RPG, but
also, yes, that is basically the plot. Sorry. The reason I say that the plot is basically Aria of Sorrow is because it basically is, except replace the darkness with Dracula. Which, I don't mind, it's a perfectly... Shut up, doll.
But yeah, so we're doing Armored Core. It's absolutely an RPG. We're doing Armored Core. Exactly how far I get through it remains to be seen because I am stuck on the fucking Volcano Roomba boss still, and that is not a major hurdle for most players. So we'll see.
We will gently coax her over the various walls she is going to hit, but she already beat Balteus, so like I believe in her.
It's like this one is just a case of doing the grind on it and
Yep.
and like taking the time, but I'll probably do some more of that in a bit and then get very, very hot because it's too hot to run a PS5 at the moment.
Balteus isn't a cheater, he's just an NPC. He doesn't have to think about things.
Balteus is a robot. Like,
yeah. Cheater. Doesn't have to think about things. You can just turn that part off. Paul knows what I'm talking about. Anyway. Yep, and I will continue to bully you until you beat Baldur's Gate before I let you play Armored Core. Thank you for behaving. But yeah, I think Armored Core is going to be interesting because it's going to be an actual FromSoft game on the podcast. We're not going to do a Dark Souls or Elden Ring because like I feel like that's too played out and we wouldn't have anything interesting to say.
What if we did a Shadow Tower?
Fuck. Oh my god.
Which one is that?
It's another fucking FromSoft game.
1988 action role-playing video game developed by From Software.
There's a sequel too that has guns.
no. Shadow Tower
We should
Abyss.
actually do Enchanted Arms.
No.
God.
It's good.
It's gonna be a pain to play.
Yeah, fair. Yes, Xbox 360 emulation, Lamau.
Or PS3.
It's on
Also
PS3,
kind of
right?
Lamau. Is it? That's funny. The mushroom guys from Dark Souls. The ones that'll just wallop you. That's good.
The game is set on the continent of Eclipse in the Holy Land of Zeptar. The player takes the role of a mercenary named Roos Hardy. That is
I didn't
Ashley
know that.
Riot naming.
God. Anyway, yeah, no, like, the first one has an English release, the second one doesn't. Fucking incredible. Anyway, yeah, no, that's probably... Armored Core is probably going to be us talking about FromSoft and their legacy in whatever way we can manage, and probably also, like, going into discussions of like, difficulty as much as it matters to...
we're gonna have to talk about difficulty, because I'm gonna be whining too much. Keep it
Yeah,
off the table.
yeah. And we're
man.
probably going to be talking about, like, how communities engage with video games and their difficulty, because that is part of
Yeah.
it. Like, there's already been a giant meme about fucking how people are getting filtered by the first boss, which, like, God. Anyway, if that's it for the questions, we can call it for now. I can't fucking talk today. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been Live Genre Chronicles. We'll see you in a month or two. I don't actually know when we'll be doing this next, but it will be sooner than 3 months gap, because holy
Before the
shit.
end of the year, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see you around. Go enjoy some video games, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.